I don't know about some of you, and I know there's people that's played the game, people who's played with me on my teams and teammates and things like that. It feels like there's this unwritten rule of how a footballer should behave, or how a footballer should move, or how a footballer should be. I know growing up in the academy, being professional was highly regarded. They will say certain things, but what I feel like a lot of coaches, managers, systems, fans, and what people forget is we're all raised in different cultures, in different places, in different environments, around different people, and we all just want to be ourselves.
Here we go, at the top of the class on a roll, and it's time to run it up, yeah you know. Maxed out, put the pedal to the floor, ayy, on a roll, here we go, here we go.
For me, there's not many places out there that kind of come from an athlete's perspective or a player's perspective. I think you've got a lot of fan channels that kind of give you the fans' perspective. You then have a lot of media platforms that give you the journalism and everything, but I don't think there's really much of a place that brings kind of like the athlete's perspective. Now, for those who don't know or those who do know me, I'm raised in the academy of West Ham. Played with some decent footballers, played under some decent managers, worked in media, done interviews with some amazing footballers, studied the game from an athlete's perspective because that's all I've ever known growing up. So for me, I wanted to create this show that kind of just covers the important and the controversial kind of topics within the culture of the sport. But like I said to you, attack them from like a player's or an athlete's perspective. For me, this is something that I wish I had growing up. I feel like there could have been a place for me to be able to have that online mentor, because some of the backgrounds where some of us may come from, we're not lucky enough to have access to that. We're not lucky to have people be able to tell us certain things, raising in different cultures and things like that. So I think it's important to have a show that can kind of uncover these things in a different angle, in a different way, instead of it being all media trained or it all just being around that. And it's actually just raw and authentic. It's original. It's how you feel. It's all these things in one, and it allows people to kind of get an insight into what an athlete is, what it's about, how to be one, how to maneuver like one, or even just like certain topics to have a different, kind of angle of view. And of course, I'm a fan of football, and what I feel like with this show and what it will do is kind of just bridge the gap between the players and the athletes themselves, or bridge the gap between the players and people who want to become footballers. So being able to give like a better angle on those things. And the first place I guess I want to start off with, to kind of bridge the gap between the two, especially when it comes to athletes and it comes to fans, is I believe fans need to kind of take their stance and understand that you're not a manager, you're not a club owner, you're a fan. Now, no one's saying that I don't understand the passion, because that's the one thing I do understand. I understand passion when it comes to this game. But I just feel like there's certain fans out there that maneuver in a certain way, where they move like they're a manager, or they move like they're the owner of the club, and what they say is gospel, and all these things, and giving these players such kind of like this hard time. It kind of makes me feel like there's this. I don't know about some of you, and I know there's people that's played the game, people who's played with me on my teams and teammates and things like that. It feels like there's this unwritten rule of how a footballer should behave, or how a footballer should move, or how a footballer should be. I know growing up in the academy, being professional was highly regarded. They will say certain things, but what I feel like a lot of coaches, managers, systems, fans, and what people forget is we're all raised in different cultures, in different places, in different environments, around different people, and we all just want to be ourselves. For example, just like different cultures, food, estates, playing cage football, being raised in different environments, that caters to who we are, and that is a part of our style, or of how we play football, or of what we bring to the game. So speaking of kind of just going into that, I want to go into kind of the Marcus Rashford situation, because a lot of people has had their say on it. I've seen obviously Ian Wright, he hit Instagram saying what he had to say, and I think there's a few questions that for me I would love to break down. And I think one of the questions are, should he have apologized? Or was he right for doing what he did? Is there better ways to go about it? All these different types of things. But what I want to do with these podcasts as well is there's certain clips that I capture online that I think, do you know what? Let's add that to the podcast, or let's add that to the show. Give people a different perspective, and then I'm gonna give mine from that. So there's a show called the Halfcast Podcast. I'm sure some of you have seen those clips, some of you heard of those clips, and if you haven't, you definitely know who Poet is. Love-hate relationship with a lot of people that he has. People love what he says, people don't. But personally, I think with this clip, he said some decent things. But he's also, for me, there was a couple things maybe wrong within that. So I kind of want to play the clip, break it down, and then give my perspective on the whole thing from that moment onwards. So let's get into the first clip.
You're apologising for being yourself, but you're compensating it for finance. And you're wondering why you're not happy in football. Because you playing football is you being yourself. All this other stuff is not you. This is for people to have a public perception of you so you can have a smoother ride. But don't you understand, in moments of adversity, look what they do to you. When David Beckham was playing football, scoring on the halfway line against fucking Wimbledon in 1996, 2 years later, there's a doll of him at White Hart Lane being hung. It's very simple. Do not give your product to people that don't understand you.
Like, bro. Like, let's honestly, I want to break that down for a second, because is he wrong? Is he right? I think he's right in certain aspects. And like I said, working in media and working in these places, yes, your product is very important. But to say to not to give your product into certain hands, because obviously people will treat you a certain way, I agree with that. There are things that are what I feel like is people fear what they don't understand. People don't like what they don't understand. And I think the first thing that happens when it comes to a footballer, and what's really important to kind of break down, is just as much as, yes, football is our job, football is what we do, we're also humans at the same time. Players also have emotions. We feel a type of way. We get upset. And obviously we've seen the video with what's been said. But I do think there's a stigma, and I've said this earlier in the show, that there's this unwritten rule of how a footballer should be and how a footballer should act. And I feel like when you put shackles on somebody, or when you try to suppress or quiet them down, I feel like this is potentially the outcome of it all. Like you can look at players like Gascoigne, had a personality, he was himself, had this aura about him, and I think there was a lot of people that just didn't understand it and they didn't like it. And look at how that career turned out. Amazing player, but people had their views and opinions. David Beckham, same thing. People have their views and opinions. Neymar, going through it right now. People have their views and opinions. Pogba, people have their views and opinions. Marcus Rashford, people have their views and opinions. I think it was James Maddison, obviously coming with a bag. I think it was at one of those flesh, but people having their views and opinions on how Dele Alli should be dressing. It's like there's this unwritten code of how a footballer should be, and I don't think that's right. That shouldn't be in place. So yes, I do understand when he says don't give your product to people, because let's be honest, he's gone out and he's done some amazing things, especially when it comes to what he's done for the children, being able to supply certain things for kids, in terms of school meals and things like that. And yes, people do hold you in a high regard. People would then look at you in a different light, because you have this MBE, you have this stigma of this type of player you've now become. And for me, I don't know. I think you still got to remember he's human at the same time. Like, yes, we do amazing things, and yes, we're doing so much for let's say for the children. But again, he is human. So if people are hurling abuse at you, no matter what you've done or what you've been through, you're going to bark back. Now, the one thing I want people to understand, especially when it comes to players, we get it. And what I feel like fans don't really understand is we know when we haven't had a great game. Like, we know. Or we know when we're having a bad period in the season. Like, we know that. We understand it. Do you not think that it affects us too? It affects us mentally. We know that we want to be able to perform at the best of our ability. And I feel like, as a fan, your job is to support the club. In supporting the club, it's also then in turn supporting your players. It includes the players. And do you really think the way, those Manchester United fans handled that situation with Marcus Rashford is the right way? I don't. So of course you're going to get a player that's going to bark back sometimes. What, because he's a player who's got to shut up? Because he earns a certain amount a week, he can't say how he really feels? No, listen, we've all been in places. Let me ask you a question. At your job, if somebody came in, a customer came in and started hurling stuff at you, saying stuff at you, being a certain way with you, What, you just going to sit there and everything's going to be all right? Everything's going to be rosy-posy? No, you ain't. You're going to have your view. You're going to say something. You feel a type of way, and you're going to bark off. And at the end of the day, where we come from in certain places, like, we have to defend ourselves. We have to stand up for ourselves. Like, people need to learn to take that into account. Like, it's like, I understand that, yes, football, where they're lucky to have experienced. I was lucky to experience a somewhat a level I reached. But at the end of the day, we still have emotions. We still have opinions. We still feel a type of way. We still, hold ourselves in high regards too. So at the end of the day, if you're going to come at me, I'm going to come at you. Because he's had enough. Because he sits there and he understands that in his head, he knows he ain't done well. He knows. He knows that they need to fix this. He knows. And then what happens is with players like that, they then have PR teams that now come out and say certain things. So this is where I do agree with what Poet said in terms of don't give your product into people's hands. You do. I mean, I understand PR is important and to dissect the situation, but for me, this is something that clubs should be backing their players on. Yes, there's fans. The fans are important, but these players are important as well, and they deserve to be protected because all they're doing is a job, and they're trying their best to do that job. But sometimes you do a job that maybe you may not feel right. Sometimes you go into your job, you're telling me that you feel 100% every day. You feel like every day you're going to give your 100%. Sometimes you have those days where you still give 100%, but you may not just be performing that well on that day. It happens. It's football. Especially in life, it happens. These things happen all the time. Now, for me, it's like, He comes out, he apologizes, says sorry. People will say, oh, he's just doing that due to PR, or he's just doing that to ease the situation. He knew he was wrong. But then if it was the other way around and he doesn't say sorry, he's labeled as a rebel. He's this, he's that. Like, come on, man. We're all human. We're all people. We've all been through stuff. And I feel like as a player, understand that they got emotion. How much times have they got, what, because they play for your club that you support, they've got to now take what you've got to take? Hell no. Come on, man. He's like, for me, I don't think he should have apologized. I don't think he needed to apologize. I feel like he's allowed to feel a type of way, especially when people are coming at you. We all know what that's like. You're going to butt back at the same time. Do you know what I mean? And like I said to you, for me, this club should have supported him. And what's so mad and what I find so funny is when a player's playing well or a player's performing, they're doing their thing, they're your best friend at that moment, right? Do you remember the days where Rashford, not even that long ago, Rashford getting compared to Mbappe? I remember the memes, I remember the posts, I remember the tweets, I remember the Instagram pictures, I remember everything. People saying Rashford better than Mbappe. Oh my God, all because of what happened between, like, come on. Like, and then all of a sudden now, he's trash, he's rubbish, he's this. No, understand that in football you have periods where you play well and sometimes you don't, and sometimes you need to figure it out. And the way the Manchester United fans are going on, it's hard for a player to figure that out. There's some players that, do you not think that maybe support your player, motivate your player, be around there for your player? I feel like for me, he probably would have responded better to that, but no, he gets the abuse, he says what he says. Tells my man to come around the corner. And then what? The fan wants to back down, get scared, call him names even more. Like, come on. What, you expect him not to say nothing? Listen, Marcus, you shouldn't have apologized. I feel like you're well within your right, and I feel like people need to just understand from a player's point of view how that comes across. How it feels. Like I said, we know we ain't played well. We know we know there's certain things in us. We beat ourselves up just as much as probably you do. But because you are not inside the house, hence why this podcast is called The Balls House. Because I want to show people what it's like inside the Balls House. Just because you're not inside the Balls House, you don't see the emotion he goes through. You don't see what's happening. That doesn't mean that's not how he feels. All you see is a tweet and you take that. All you see is what he does on that camera and take that. But you don't get the overall picture. We are human too. Okay? I always like to say football's an occupation, but who we are is something totally different. And people need to start respecting that, man. Especially like ex-players. You guys are being players. You guys understand that. But you're from an era of, there's a written rule of how you need to be as a professional. That's the era you're from. Okay? We're in a new generation where people want people to be themselves, authentic, original. This is who we are. And what he was is saying he just had enough. He's not a bad person. He's just had enough. Everybody snaps once in a while. And like I said to you, for me, I feel like the club needed to do more. I feel like also punditry and legends needed to do more. And I can't lie, I don't think Poet was wrong. I don't. But speaking of kind of like clubs doing more and what things are going through, I kind of just wanted to segue into what's going on with Chelsea at the moment, man, and really giving a player's perspective from that angle too. I feel like a lot of players with what they're going through at Chelsea right now, it's a stiff one. It's a difficult one, and I think there's a lot of questions surrounding that. You know, what's going to happen with these players? Where are they going to go? What's the situation from here? And let's be real, right now the players, what they're trying their best to do is knuckle down, get their heads on games, and play their games the way they need to, get as much points as they need to. But watching Rio Ferdinand break down kind of what's going through these players' mind on the Vibe with Fire podcast. And I just want to play that clip again because for me, like the way he broke it down was absolutely top class, and I think a lot of people need to hear it. And then, like I said to you, I'm going to add whatever I can add on top of that, just to bring a bit more context to you lot to get it from, like I said to you, bridging that gap, man, between fans and the players. So let me just play the clip quick.
Sorry, I think that it depends what stage of your career that you're at as well, and what contract you've got. I mean, if you're a free transfer right now, like all the free transfers, I'll be surprised if any of them stay now, because the problem you've got is the uncertainty. How is one of them going to say, "Oh, give me a 4-year deal with the money we agree"? How do you know? One, your manager's still going to be there, and two, if they're going to be able to fulfil that. You don't know who your next owner is. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what's the revenue bringing through the club. Can they support that? Can they fulfill it? So all those questions that you can't answer and no one at the club can answer, then why are you going to stay there?
I think for me, that clip there kind of answers a lot of the questions. And I think there's just a few things I want to add to that as well. So the first thing he spoke about was if you're a free transfer, how are you feeling? Do you stay? Do you go? And he said most of the time free transfers. He said like you're probably thinking to go because you're a free transfer. Obviously, you know things. The club's sticky. You're probably going to be able to get the place you kind of desire in some way, shape, or form. Then you move on to the players who are under contract, and it's like a lot going through their mind because again, it's the uncertainty. From a player's perspective, when I'm sitting over here with those two scenarios. I'm looking at it as I think it's all about what's the player's ambition. I think the player's ambition is important. I think there's certain people that play the game for certain reasons. And for me, the ambition, like I said to you, if you're about winning titles and you're about doing what you're doing, you may look to go somewhere else to look to be better because it is a sticky situation. No badness on a club or whatever it may be, but it's just a sticky situation. And as a player, you know, like I said, you have ambition. You want to be able to go and win titles, trophies, this and that. And I'm not saying that Chelsea hasn't, but I'm saying you may want to keep continuing winning those titles, keep continuing winning those trophies. And maybe with this situation, it may affect a lot, so it may not be it. This may not be the time where you stay at that club and try to do that. So, yeah, man, I feel like for me, it's about your ambition, where you want to go. Do you want to win titles? The players you want to play with, the experiences you have. Then you also got some of the players that may be rounding off their career. They may be looking to stay because they're thinking, okay, cool, easy win, nice club. Like, you know, Aspilicueta, long servant to the club, doing his thing. You know, those players. The one area I want to focus on, and I think this is going to be amazing for that type of player is the youth players. I think for me, this is the chance where they can come in and show what they want to do. If I was a youth player at Chelsea right now, I'll be looking at this situation and going, oh, this is my chance in. This is my way in. I'm going to go away. I'm going to go in pre-season. I'm going to work my ass off. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get my body in shape, my mentality in shape, food, like diet in shape, drinking in shape, all of that. And then when I come back, I'm going to hit the ground running. I'm going to show the manager, this is my time and I want that position. And I feel like when you look at kind of like, look, even we spoke about Rashford at the start of this. Look at how he got started. Injuries, got an opportunity, he was in. Raheem Sterling, problems with Liverpool financially, you know, got his chance in. A lot of young players get their chances when clubs are in financial situations. And I think for me, that's the area I think a lot of people are going to start seeing from Chelsea is a lot of youth players being developed now. You've seen the likes of Trevor Chalobah come through. And I think Mason Mount, of course. You're going to see a lot of others. You're going to see a lot of other young players, I think, with this situation. I think it's important that these young players see that as a chance. And I think, for me, whatever happens with Chelsea going forward, like I said to you, I think this is going to be that time where, I'm looking forward to it from a footballer's perspective, seeing some new young talent come through. And if I was one of those older players, or if I was an OG, and I'm looking down at these young footballers, this is what I would be saying. If I was the Lukakus of the world, or if I was captain, like, the Jorginhos, I'd be looking at the youth players saying, this could potentially be your chance now. This could potentially be your time.
Here we go, at the top of the class on a roll. And it's time to run it up, yeah, Maxed out, put the pedal to the floor. Ayy, on a roll, here we